Evening came softly over the small town of Green Hill. The sun dropped behind the western ridge, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The air smelled of rain and distant smoke from kitchen fires. People closed their shops, children ran through the streets, and the hum of life filled the place. On the far edge of the town, near an abandoned landing site, a silver light appeared in the sky. It was not a star or a plane. It moved too straight, too controlled. The light grew brighter as a ship descended through the clouds. The old landing field had not been used for years. Birds scattered as the ship touched the ground with a hiss of steam. The townspeople stopped what they were doing. A few came running to see what had arrived. The doors of the ship opened, and from the smoke stepped a tall woman wearing a long gray coat. Her hair was black with a streak of silver. Her eyes glowed faintly gold under the dim light. A scar ran across her cheek, and her posture was firm like a soldier standing before a battle line. Her name was Mira. For years, the world believed she was gone. She had led soldiers in the outer colonies, fighting the alien tribes who had invaded the frontier worlds. News had once called her the Iron Fang General. She was known as both human and something more. She had been part of a secret unit that mixed human strength with animal genes to fight on wild planets, where ordinary soldiers could not survive. And now, she was back on Earth. The crowd stood frozen, watching her in silence. No one spoke, though whispers spread. Some recognized her face from the old war posters that still hung in a few corners of the town. Others only saw a strange woman with wolf-like eyes and the aura of someone who had seen too much. Mira looked around slowly. Her eyes moved from one face to another until she found the street sign that read Willow Street. She had walked there once as a child, long before the war began. Her chest tightened with a feeling she could not name. She took her small metal bag and walked down the path toward that street. The people stepped aside as she passed, whispering quietly. At the far end of Willow Street stood a small house with a wooden fence. A man was fixing the gate, his hands dirty with paint and dust. He looked up when he heard the sound of boots on the road. The man froze when he saw her. "Mira," he whispered, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks. She stopped a few steps away from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she gave a faint nod. "It has been a long time, Thomas." Thomas dropped the paintbrush. His mind rushed through memories he had buried long ago. He had grown up with Mira. They had played under the same trees, gone to the same school, and dreamed of leaving town together. But she had left for the academy, then the military, and finally the war. Years passed and letters stopped coming. He thought she had died. "I thought you were gone," Thomas said, his voice shaking slightly. "I was," Mira replied quietly. "But not anymore." He looked at her closely. The confident, bright girl he once knew was gone. What stood before him was a soldier, worn by battle but still standing strong. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried 1,000 untold stories. "Come inside," he said after a moment. "You look tired." She hesitated, then nodded. The warmth of his home was strange after years of metal walls and cold barracks. The small house smelled of bread and wood smoke. Thomas poured her a glass of water and placed it in front of her. "People said you were a general," Thomas said softly. "They said you commanded fleets." "I did," she answered. "Now I command nothing." The silence that followed was heavy. Mira looked out the window where children played under the streetlight. The sound of their laughter made her heart ache. She had seen children on far planets, but most had been hungry or afraid. Here the peace felt unreal. Thomas studied her face. The faint glow in her eyes and the quiet strength in her movements reminded him of the rumors about soldiers like her. She had been part of the hybrid units, humans mixed with animal instincts to survive in alien conditions. He had heard stories that they were faster, stronger, and sharper than any human soldier. Many had died in the war and few returned home. "Did anyone come back with you?" Thomas asked. Mira shook her head. "No, I am the last of my unit." Thomas did not ask more. He could see she did not want to talk about it. He poured her another glass of water and sat down across from her. "You can stay here for the night," he said. "There is a small house near the end of the street. It used to be my aunt's. No one lives there now. I will clean it tomorrow for you." Mira looked at him with quiet gratitude. "Thank you." That night the rain began to fall. Mira stood at the window watching drops hit the glass. The sound of the rain mixed with the soft hum of the town. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. She closed her eyes, and for a moment she thought she could hear the sounds of battle again. The roar of engines, the cry of soldiers, the flash of weapons in the dark sky. She opened her eyes quickly and took a deep breath. This was home now, or at least what remained of it. The next morning, the street woke to find the Iron Fang General sweeping the porch of an old house. She wore simple clothes Thomas had given her. Her sharp eyes scanned every corner, as if she were guarding a base. People passing by slowed down, curious but cautious. Some greeted her with polite smiles. Others crossed the street quietly. Later that day, Thomas stopped by with a basket of bread. "You do not need to work so hard already," he said. "I need to keep busy," Mira replied. "Idle hands remember too much." He understood what she meant. They walked together down the street and Thomas pointed out the changes in town. The old school had been rebuilt. The library was now a tech center. The large field where they used to play was now filled with solar panels. "So much has changed," Mira said softly. "War changed everything," Thomas replied. "Even here." In the afternoon, they sat on a bench near the park. Children ran past laughing. A little girl tripped and fell, and Mira stood instantly, moving faster than Thomas could react. She lifted the girl gently and brushed the dirt from her knees. The girl stared at her golden eyes with wonder instead of fear. "You are strong," the girl said. "Like a hero." Mira smiled faintly. "I was once. Now I just help where I can." The girl giggled and ran back to her friends. Thomas watched Mira carefully. He saw a faint softness in her face that had not been there before. For years she had been a weapon. Now she was trying to be human again. When evening came, the two walked back to their houses. The street lamps flickered on and the sound of crickets filled the air. Thomas stopped at his gate and turned to her. "It is good that you came back," he said. "This town could use someone like you." Mira looked at the horizon where the stars began to appear. "I am not sure the world needs me anymore," she said. "It does," Thomas replied. "Maybe not as a soldier. Maybe as someone who remembers what peace costs." Mira looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe you're right." That night she walked back to her house and stood under the sky. The moon was full and bright. The silver light touched her skin, and for a moment the wolf side of her stirred. Her senses sharpened and she could hear the quiet heartbeat of the town, the laughter of a family inside a home, the whisper of trees in the wind, the steady breathing of a world that was finally at peace. She closed her eyes and let the sound calm her. She had fought for years to protect humanity from destruction. But here, in this small street, she saw what it had all been for: life, family, peace. Things that seemed small but meant everything. Mira turned back toward her house and whispered to herself, "I am home." The words felt strange but right. For the first time in a very long while, the Iron Fang General slept without her armor, without her weapons, and without fear. Outside, the rain stopped, and the moon shone over Willow Street, lighting the home of a soldier who had finally found her way back. Morning light touched the roofs of Willow Street as the town woke from sleep. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the smell of bread from the bakery at the corner. People opened their doors and greeted each other, the same way they always did. Yet for some, the street felt different now. The Iron Fang General had returned, and everyone was still unsure how to act around her. Mira stood in the small garden behind her house. She was barefoot on the grass, her hair tied back, her eyes closed. She breathed slowly, her body steady and calm. The rhythm of her breath matched the sound of the morning wind. Then she began to move. Her training drills were silent but full of power. Each motion was sharp, precise, and graceful. She had spent years mastering this balance between strength and control. A few children stopped at the fence, watching her with wide eyes. They had never seen someone move like that. It looked almost like a dance, though there was something dangerous hidden inside every step. When Mira finished, she noticed them and gave a small nod. The children waved shyly before running away, laughing as they went. Inside the nearby house, Thomas watched from his window. He smiled to himself. Seeing her move like that reminded him of stories from old news broadcasts. The Iron Fang General, the one who led both humans and hybrids to victory. It felt strange to think that the same woman was now trimming roses in his aunt's old garden. Later that morning, Thomas walked over carrying a basket of fruit. "I thought you might need breakfast," he said. Mira looked up from her plants and smiled lightly. "You always bring food," she said. "Someone has to make sure you eat something that isn't ration bars," he replied. She laughed quietly. It was the first real laugh he had heard from her since she returned. They sat together on the porch steps and shared fruit under the soft sunlight. Thomas asked, "Do you plan to stay here long?" "I am not sure," Mira said. "The army cleared my name and gave me freedom to live anywhere. But after so many years of fighting, I do not know what to do with peace. Peace takes practice too." Thomas said kindly, "You will get used to it." She looked at him thoughtful. Maybe. The days passed slowly. Mira tried to adjust to her new life. She helped people with small things, carrying heavy boxes, fixing fences, or guarding the market during night shifts. Her presence made the town feel safer. Some people still kept their distance, but others began to speak to her more. They learned that she was quiet but polite, serious but gentle with children. Still, there were nights when she could not sleep. The silence of the town felt strange after years of war noise. Sometimes she woke up in the middle of the night, her body tense, thinking she had heard explosions. She would walk outside and sit under the moon until her heart calmed down. One afternoon, as she returned from the market, a small voice called from behind her, "Miss Mira." She turned and saw a little girl running toward her. It was Lena, Thomas's niece. Her dark hair bounced as she ran, and her hands held something made of flowers. "This is for you," Lena said proudly, holding up a small crown made of yellow daisies. Mira blinked in surprise. "For me?" "Yes, you look like someone who should wear flowers," Lena said with a grin. Mira knelt down and took the crown carefully. "Thank you," she said. "It is very pretty," Lena giggled. "You can wear it when you smile. You look nice when you smile." Mira felt warmth spread through her chest. She placed the flower crown on her head. The petals brushed against her hair, soft and gentle. "Do I look like a hero now?" she asked. "You look like a friend," Lena said. Mira's heart softened at the words. She reached out and patted the girl's head. "Then I will try to be one." From that day, Lena began to visit often. She would bring drawings, small gifts, or just stories from school. She asked endless questions about space, battles, and strange worlds. Mira answered most of them with care, avoiding the painful parts. She told Lena about the stars that never set, and the mountains made of crystal on distant planets. The girl listened with wide eyes, amazed by every detail. Thomas was happy to see this. Mira seemed more alive when Lena was around. The soldier's cold mask began to fade. She smiled more, and sometimes even played small games with the children. The neighbors noticed this change too. The fear around her slowly turned into curiosity and respect. One evening, as the sun went down, Thomas invited Mira for dinner. His sister cooked warm soup, and Lena sat beside Mira, chattering about her day. The room was filled with laughter and light. Mira felt something she had not felt for years, a sense of belonging. After dinner, Thomas and Mira sat outside on the porch. The sky was clear and stars glimmered above them. "Lena likes you a lot," Thomas said. "She reminds me of the soldiers I used to protect," Mira replied. "They were young, full of dreams. I lost many of them. I do not want to lose anyone again." "You are safe here," Thomas said softly. "No one will take that from you." She nodded slowly but did not speak. Inside, she still felt restless. Her instincts were trained for danger. Peace made her uneasy, like standing still while the world moved around her. The next day, she visited the small library that stood near the town's center. The librarian, an older man named Joran, recognized her at once. "You are the general, aren't you?" he asked. "I was," she said quietly. "Now I'm just Mira," he smiled kindly. "Once a general, always a general. Come in, young lady. You may borrow anything you like." Mira spent hours reading about Earth, its history, its people, and the changes that happened while she was away. So much had moved forward while she was fighting far from home. Cities had grown smarter, medicine had improved, and the stars she once fought under were now open for peaceful travel. It felt strange to see humanity thriving without war. When she left the library, she stood on the steps and looked at the people walking by. They carried groceries, laughed with friends, and hurried home before the evening rain. For a long time, Mira had thought humanity was fragile, something that needed her strength to survive. But now she saw another truth. People were stronger than she remembered. They rebuilt, they healed, they moved forward. That night, she sat outside her house looking at the sky. Thomas came over with a cup of tea. "You look lost in thought," he said. "I am thinking about what comes next," she said. "Maybe you do not need to plan everything," Thomas said. "Sometimes the next thing comes on its own." Mira gave a small smile. You sound like an old teacher. I am older than you remember, he said with a laugh. But I mean it. You fought long enough. Maybe it is time to live. She looked at him and nodded. Maybe you were right. Weeks passed and Mira became part of the town's rhythm. She helped rebuild the playground near the park. She repaired broken fences. She taught the young guards simple defense drills. Her skills were no longer for war but for protection. People began to greet her with friendly waves. Even the mayor came once to thank her for helping the community. Yet deep inside she felt a faint unease. At night, when the moon rose high, her instincts sharpened. Sometimes she would sense something far away, a movement in the sky, a faint sound that no one else noticed. Her hybrid senses picked up things beyond human hearing. She told herself it was nothing, just old habits that refused to fade. One night, while sitting under the stars, she heard a soft knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Lena standing there in her nightdress, holding a small blanket. Bad dream? Mira asked gently. Lena nodded. Can I stay here for a while? Mira smiled and let her in. They sat by the window, watching the night sky. Lena leaned against her arm, sleepy but calm. Mira, Lena whispered. Do you ever have bad dreams? Sometimes, Mira said. But I face them until they fade. Does it work? It does when you have someone who believes in you, Mira said. Lena smiled and closed her eyes. Mira sat there watching over her. In that moment, she realized something she had not understood before. All the battles, all the years of struggle, all the pain, she had fought so others could live like this, safe and peaceful. And now she was part of that peace. As the night grew quiet, Mira looked out the window and saw the stars glowing faintly. Somewhere out there were the world she had once fought on. But here, in this small house, she felt something stronger than victory. She felt home. She whispered softly, I will protect this place no matter what. The next morning, she woke early, made breakfast, and watched the street come alive again. Life moved forward, simple and steady. For the first time in many years, Mira felt like she was part of something worth staying for. And yet, far above the peaceful town, something unseen drifted through the sky. Silent, distant, and watching. But for now, Willow Street belonged to peace, and Mira finally allowed herself to believe in it. The evening began like any other in the small town of Green Hill. The air was calm, the sky clear, and the people relaxed after a long day. Children played on Willow Street while families prepared dinner. The town had grown used to peace, and even Mira had started to believe that her days of battle were truly over. She stood outside her house, watering the small garden she had planted. The flowers Lena had given her grew beside the porch, bright and cheerful. Mira smiled faintly at the sight. The town's quiet rhythm had started to heal her from the inside. For the first time in years, she no longer felt like a soldier waiting for orders. Thomas waved from across the street. You are starting to look like a gardener instead of a general, he said with a grin. Maybe that is not a bad thing, Mira said. Not bad at all, he replied. Lena ran up the road holding a paper plane. Mira, look. I made it fly farther today. Mira bent down and caught the plane as it glided toward her. It flies well. You must be a good engineer, she said kindly. Lena beamed. Maybe one day I will build real ships. Then I will be your first passenger, Mira said. They laughed together, and for a while the evening felt perfect. But far above them, hidden beyond the clouds, something stirred. A dark shape glided silently through the upper atmosphere. It was not a human ship. Its hull was rough and black, absorbing radar signals. It moved like a shadow that did not belong in the peaceful sky. Mira suddenly stopped laughing. Her eyes lifted toward the clouds. Her senses, sharper than any human's, caught something faint. A vibration in the air, a low hum that no one else could hear. Her instincts tightened like a wire. Thomas noticed her sudden stillness. Mira, what is it? She looked at the sky for a long moment before speaking. I am not sure, but something feels wrong. Thomas followed her gaze but saw nothing unusual. Maybe you are just remembering old times, he said gently. Maybe, she replied, though her tone was uncertain. That night, Mira could not sleep. She walked outside and looked up again. The stars looked the same, but deep inside she felt a weight pressing on her senses. Old instincts told her danger was near. She told herself it was only her imagination, yet she stayed awake until dawn. The next day, life continued as usual. Mira went to the training field to help the local guards. She taught them how to defend the town in case of emergencies. The young guards respected her, even though they could not imagine what kind of battle she had seen. During a short break, one of them pointed to the horizon. "Look, General." A strange light near the ridge. Mira turned and saw it too. A small glimmer like metal catching the sun, hovered for a second before vanishing behind the hills. It was too steady to be a star and too quiet to be a drone. Her heart quickened. "Pack up the training," she ordered calmly. "Go back to town and check all communication systems." "I will follow." The guards obeyed without question. Mira ran to the edge of the ridge, her movements fast and sure. She reached a high point and scanned the sky with her sharp eyes. The faint smell of burning metal drifted in the air. Something had entered the atmosphere recently. When she returned to the town's communication center, Tomas was already there, helping the guards check the old scanner. "We picked up something strange," one of them said. "A ship entered the upper sky about an hour ago, but it is not responding to any contact signals." "Show me," Mira said. The young guard pulled up the radar image. A single dark mark moved slowly toward Earth's surface. Then the signal flickered and disappeared. Mira studied the screen, her expression hardening. "That is not a civilian ship." "Turn on defense alert quietly. Do not cause panic." Thomas looked at her. "You think it is an attack?" "I do not know yet," she said. "But I cannot ignore it." By nightfall, the sky had grown cloudy. Mira stood at the edge of town, her eyes scanning the distance. The air felt heavy. She could hear the low hum again, stronger this time. Her sharp hearing picked up the faint rhythm of engines moving closer. Suddenly, a flash lit the clouds, followed by a deep roar. A dark object streaked through the sky and vanished behind the eastern forest. The ground shook slightly when it hit. Birds flew in panic. The town fell silent. Within minutes, alarms began to ring. Thomas ran toward her, out of breath. "It crashed near the old forest," he said. "The guards are gathering there." Mira nodded. "Stay here and keep everyone inside. I will go." "You cannot go alone," he said quickly. "I will not be alone. The guards will follow." "But you must keep the people calm," she said firmly. Thomas hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful." Mira and a small group of guards moved toward the crash site. The forest was dark and quiet except for the crackle of distant fire. When they reached the clearing, they saw the ship, half buried in the ground, smoking but mostly intact. It was large and black, with strange patterns along its hull. One of the guards whispered, "That is not human design." Mira stepped forward carefully. The smell confirmed her fear. The metal had a scent she remembered from the Frontier War. "Everyone stand back," she said. The ship's side opened with a hiss, and a faint green light shone from within. Figures stepped out, tall, thin creatures with armor that shimmered under the moonlight. Their eyes glowed blue and their movements were smooth and silent. Mira recognized them at once. "Stay alert," she warned. "They are not friendly." The creatures spread out quickly, their weapons drawn. One of them made a sharp sound like a command. The guards aimed their rifles, but Mira raised her hand. "Do not fire until I say." The lead alien looked straight at her. Its voice was deep and metallic. "Wolf General Mira, you live." Mira froze. "How do you know my name?" "We hunted you once." "We will finish what we started," the alien said. The guards shifted nervously. Mira's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "This is not your war. Leave this planet. This world shelters you. It will burn." The alien replied coldly. The moment the words ended, Mira shouted, "Down!" Energy bolts flashed through the air. She moved faster than the eye could follow, grabbing a fallen branch and hurling it like a spear. It struck one of the attackers, knocking it backward. The guards returned fire and bright flashes lit the clearing. Mira charged forward using her speed and strength. She slammed into the nearest alien, disarming it in seconds. Another tried to strike her, but she twisted aside and threw it to the ground. The forest echoed with the sound of battle. After a few minutes, the aliens retreated toward the ship, dragging their wounded. Mira stood breathing hard, her eyes glowing faintly gold. "Do not chase them," she ordered. "They will regroup. We must warn the town." The guards nodded and followed her back. When they reached Willow Street, Thomas was waiting. His face turned pale when he saw her armor burned and her hands scraped. "What happened?" he asked. "They came for me," Mira said simply. "They were tracking my signal. They want revenge for what happened years ago." "Why you?" Thomas asked. "I led the attack that destroyed their last base. They never forgot. They think killing me will erase their defeat." The townspeople had gathered, worried and frightened. Mira faced them and spoke calmly. Listen to me. There is danger coming, but we will protect this place together. Stay calm. Stay united. Her voice carried strength that silenced fear. People began to move, following her orders. The guards set up watch posts and Thomas helped organize supplies. Later that night, when the town was quiet again, Mira stood near the river looking at her reflection. She saw the faint glow of her eyes in the water and the tired lines on her face. I thought I could escape it, she whispered. But war always finds me. Thomas came and stood beside her. You are not alone this time, he said. She looked at him and nodded slowly. Then we will stand together. The wind blew softly through the trees. Above them, the clouds moved aside and the stars appeared once more. Mira looked up, her senses alert. Somewhere out there, the enemy was regrouping. She could feel it. Peace had been broken, but she would not let fear win. Not again. As she turned back toward the street, she saw the light from Thomas's house, warm and steady. Inside, Lena was sleeping, safe for now. That sight gave her strength. Mira whispered to herself, they will not take this home. And under the silent night sky, the Iron Fang general prepared once again to defend the world she loved. The morning light came weak and pale through the smoke that still hung over the settlement. Mira stood at the edge of the street, her eyes scanning the horizon. The night had been restless. People had barely slept after the first attack. Some packed their things to flee, but most stayed because Mira told them to. She had promised that she would not let anyone harm them again. Her words carried weight because she had lived through wars, and everyone who saw her that morning could feel that promise burning in her heart. Thomas walked toward her, his face tired but determined. He had been helping with repairs through the night. The air smelled of metal and burnt wires. The people trusted Mira now. They had seen her fight, seen her save lives. Even those who once whispered about her wolf blood now stood ready to follow her command. Thomas stopped beside her and handed her a cup of warm tea. She took it silently, nodding in thanks. They will come again, she said in a low voice. Thomas nodded. Then we'll fight again. This is our home. Mira looked down the street. Children were carrying small boxes of supplies, helping the older ones. The people moved with quiet strength. She could feel the bond between them. It gave her hope, something she had not felt for years. A few soldiers from the city arrived before noon. They had heard of the attack and came to help. But when they saw Mira standing in her old uniform, their faces changed. They recognized her, the Iron Fang general, the one who once commanded whole fleets. She gave them calm instructions, setting up barriers and positions. Though she had no rank now, everyone obeyed her voice. As the sun rose higher, sensors detected movement in orbit. Mira watched the sky darken as shadows passed overhead. The enemy had returned, stronger this time. Their ship spread out, cutting through the clouds. The sound of their engines filled the air like thunder. Mira raised her hand, signaling everyone to take position. Stay calm, she said. We fight smart. We fight together. The first explosion shook the ground. Thomas and other villagers hid the children in underground shelters. Mira led the defense line at the street's entrance. Her soldiers crouched behind cover, holding rifles. When the enemy dropped from their ships, the battle began. Energy blasts tore through the air, lighting up the smoke. Mira moved fast, her reflexes sharp. She ducked, rolled, and fired back. Her senses guided her. She could hear movements others could not. She could smell the strange metallic scent of alien armor before they appeared. Every time she struck, her claws cut through steel. But even as she fought, she made sure her soldiers stayed safe. Tomas saw her move like lightning. He felt fear, but also awe. This was not the quiet woman who had been drinking tea at his table. This was the general who had once saved worlds. Yet behind her fierce eyes, he saw pain too. A deep wish that no one else would die. The battle lasted long hours. When the first wave broke, Mira called her people back to reload. The aliens regrouped and began pushing forward again. Mira knew they wanted her. She could feel it in how they moved, in how their fire focused wherever she stood. She was the target, the symbol of everything they hated. The ground cracked as heavy machines landed. The air burned with heat from their weapons. Mira climbed to the top of a damaged building and signaled the soldiers to fall back to new cover. She jumped down, landing beside Thomas, who was helping a wounded man. You should be in shelter, she told him. I won't leave you, Thomas said. You saved us once. Now it's our turn. His words gave her strength. Together, they guided people out of the burning houses. Mira's armor was scorched and broken in many places. Her skin burned, but she kept going. The wolf inside her gave her endurance, but it was her human heart that drove her. She fought not for orders, not for glory, but for the faces she saw every day, the people who had accepted her. When the enemy reached the middle of the town, Mira made her final stand. She called every remaining soldier and civilian who could fight. They formed a circle at the street's end, weapons ready. The aliens came fast, confident they would crush the humans easily. But Mira shouted one word, "Now," and the hidden traps exploded. Flames and debris tore through the attackers. The people of the street fought fiercely beside her. Thomas used an old pulse rifle covering her back. She moved through the smoke, striking and defending. Her claws flashed, her movements smooth and strong. She was a blur of silver and gray, her eyes bright with focus. Every strike was clean, every motion controlled. The enemy began to fall back, surprised by the humans' unity. When the last of the invaders retreated to their ships, Mira stood alone in the street. The sound of engines faded into the clouds. Smoke rose from broken walls. Bodies of machines lay scattered across the ground. Her hands trembled. She looked around and saw Thomas walking toward her, limping slightly but smiling. "It's over," he said. Mira shook her head slowly. "Not yet. They will come again someday. But we are ready now." People began to come out of hiding, cheering softly. Some cried. Children ran to Mira, hugging her without fear. Her eyes softened. She knelt and placed her hand on a boy's head. He looked up at her and said, "You saved us, General." She smiled gently. "No, we saved each other." Later, when the fires were put out and the wounded cared for, Mira sat on a broken wall watching the sunset. Thomas sat beside her. Neither spoke for a while. The air was calm again. Birds returned to the rooftops. Thomas finally said, "You know, I used to think heroes belonged to stories. But today you showed me something real." Mira looked at him and shook her head. "I am no hero. I only did what had to be done. You and the others were brave too." He smiled. "Maybe, but you gave us hope. You made us believe we could stand." She looked at the fading sky and felt something she had not felt since the war began. A sense of peace. She had always thought that home was a place she had lost forever. But here, in this small street with people who fought beside her, she realized home was not a place. It was the people who cared, the ones who stayed when things grew dark. Night came quietly. The town was silent except for the distant hum of power lines being repaired. Mira walked through the street helping move debris. She refused to rest while others worked. Thomas followed her, carrying tools. At one corner, they found Lena sleeping beside her mother. The little girl had refused to go to shelter until she saw Mira safe. Thomas picked her up carefully and smiled. "She believes you can do anything," he said. Mira smiled softly. "Then I must make sure she keeps believing." They walked back toward the repaired houses. The stars were bright above them. For the first time in years, Mira looked at the sky without fear. The war might come again one day, but now she knew she was not alone. She had people who would stand with her. As she reached her house, she paused and looked back at the street. Smoke still rose in thin trails, but life had returned. People were talking, helping, laughing again. Mira took a slow breath and stepped inside. She placed her broken armor on the table, staring at it for a long moment. Then she turned away. Tomorrow she would start helping rebuild. Tomorrow she would train the young ones to defend themselves. Tomorrow she would live not as a soldier, but as a protector. The Iron Fang general had finally found her purpose again, not in battle, but in the peace she fought to protect. And deep inside she knew that if the war ever returned, this time it would not be only her fight. Humanity had learned to stand together. Mira closed her eyes and whispered a quiet promise to herself, to guard this street, to guard these people, and to never let the shadows take their light again. That night, the stars shone brighter as if the universe itself watched over the small town that had stood against the darkness. The days following the battle were quiet but full of activity. The people of Willow Street worked together to rebuild homes, repair fences, and clean up the damage from the attack. Mira walked among them, her hands dirty with dust and wood shavings. For the first time in years, she felt at peace, not because the war had ended, but because the people of the street had shown her that courage was not just in fighting, it was in living. Thomas worked beside her, lifting planks and placing them where needed. His hands were blistered from carrying supplies, but his eyes shone with determination. He had always been steady, even when Mira had been far away fighting alien worlds. Now he was the one reminding her that home was worth protecting, not just with strength but with care. Lena ran between them, carrying small buckets of water and helping wherever she could. She laughed freely, no longer afraid of Mira's sharp eyes or wolf-like instincts. Mira felt a soft warmth in her chest whenever the little girl smiled at her. Lena had become a bridge between her past as a soldier and her present as a human again. "Careful, Mira," Thomas said as she lifted a heavy beam. "You are not invincible here." "I am not invincible anywhere," she replied. "But I am strong enough to help them." Even though her body still carried the marks of battle, the scars, the burns, the weariness, she moved with grace and purpose. Every action she took reminded the people of Willow Street that they could trust her. They could believe in her, and through her, they could believe in themselves. One afternoon, Mira walked through the town square, observing how the residents had returned to normal life. The bakery opened early, the children played by the fountain, and the older people sat on benches talking quietly. It was a simple scene, yet it filled her with an emotion she had not allowed herself to feel in years: belonging. Tomas approached her with a smile. "You have done more for this street in a few weeks than most people do in a lifetime." "I only returned," she said softly. "The people did the rest themselves." He shook his head. "No, you reminded them they could stand together. You gave them hope." Her eyes met his, and she felt the quiet weight of the past years lift a little. The battles she had fought were still inside her, but now she realized that there was more to life than war. She had come back not just to find peace for herself, but to protect the people she had grown to care about. That evening, Thomas invited Mira to join his family for dinner. The small house was warm and filled with light. Lena sat at the table, giggling as she shared her day's stories. Mira smiled, listening carefully, feeling a sense of home she had not known before. "Sit here, Mira," Tomas said, pulling out a chair for her. "You are part of the family now." "I am honored," she replied, her voice calm but full of feeling. The meal passed with laughter and conversation. Mira noticed how comfortable she felt, something she had not experienced in decades. She could let down her guard, speak freely, and enjoy the presence of others without fear. She watched Tomas's family interact with each other, and she realized that this was the kind of life she had been missing. A life filled with love, trust, and quiet moments. After dinner, Mira walked outside with Lena. The stars were bright in the night sky, and the air was cool and fresh. Lena held Mira's hand and pointed to a constellation. "Do you remember the stars you told me about?" the little girl asked. "I do," Mira said with a smile. "Some are very far away on worlds you cannot reach yet." Lena tilted her head. "One day I will see them." "You will," Mira promised. "And I will be there with you." The bond between Mira and Lena grew stronger each day. The little girl reminded her that it was possible to be gentle and strong at the same time. She was a living proof that life continued, and that humanity's courage was not only in fighting enemies, but in caring for each other. As the weeks passed, Mira became more integrated into the town. She helped organize safety drills, taught children self-defense, and repaired homes alongside the residents. Each act, no matter how small, strengthened the trust between her and the people. Mira realized that the greatest victory was not in defeating enemies, but in protecting and nurturing a community. One morning, Mira and Thomas were walking down the street when a group of children approached them, carrying small handmade banners. "For Mira, our hero," one child shouted. Mira knelt down, her eyes warm. "Thank you. But remember, heroes are not alone. You all are heroes too." The children cheered and waved their banners. And for the first time, Mira allowed herself to feel proud, not of victories in battle, but of the trust and love she had found here. That evening, as she sat by the window, Mira reflected on the months that had passed since her return. She had once believed that her life would always be defined by war and loss, but Willow Street had shown her another path. She could live, laugh, and protect without fighting. She could build a family from the people who chose to stand together. Thomas joined her quietly. "You have changed this town," he said. "And I think it has changed you too." Mira nodded slowly. "I am learning. I thought my purpose was only to fight, but my purpose now is to be here, to be part of something bigger than myself. He looked at her and smiled. You are more than a general, Mira. You are a protector, a friend, and part of our family. Her heart swelled with emotion. She realized that she had never truly understood family until now. It was not only blood that connected people. It was trust, care, and shared experience. The people of Willow Street had become her family, the family she had never had but had always needed. Days turned into weeks and life continued peacefully. Mira trained with the children, taught the adult safety skills, and joined Thomas in small projects around the town. Each evening she would walk with Lena under the stars, telling her stories of distant worlds, of bravery and courage, and of hope. One night, as the moon rose high above the rooftops, Mira stood at the edge of the street. Looking at the lights of homes and the laughter of children playing in the yards, she felt a quiet strength inside her. The battles she had fought in distant galaxies no longer defined her. Here she could create a legacy of love, courage, and protection. She turned back to Thomas, who stood beside her. "Do you think we are truly safe now?" he asked. "For now," she said. "But even if danger comes again, we are ready. Together nothing can break this street or the people on it." Lena ran up and hugged her tightly. "You are my family, Mira," she said. "Yes," Mira whispered, holding her close. "And you are mine." For the first time in her life, Mira understood what it meant to belong. She had fought wars across galaxies, faced enemies that threatened entire planets, and survived battles that few could imagine. Yet the greatest victory of all was not in defeating enemies. It was in building a home, earning trust, and protecting the people she loved. Mira looked at the peaceful street, the glowing windows, and the happy faces around her. She thought of the soldiers she had lost, the battles she had fought, and the world she had seen. And she realized that every step, every struggle had led her to this moment. She whispered softly to herself, "This is my home, my family, the life I was meant to find." The night sky was calm, the stars shining down on Willow Street. Mira walked slowly to her house, holding Lena's hand. She passed by Thomas, who smiled at her with pride and warmth. She entered her home feeling safe, loved, and part of something greater than herself. For the first time in years, Mira slept without fear, without armor, and without worry. She was not just a general or a soldier. She was a daughter of this street, a protector of her family, and a woman who had finally come home. And as Willow Street rested peacefully under the night sky, Mira knew that she would never face the world alone again. The galaxy might remember her as the Iron Fang General, but on this quiet street she was simply Mira, a part of the family she had never had, and the life she had always deserved.